You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch, and we ask that you hit the like button below and subscribe button and share us with your friends. That's how we let the whole world know how we are raising a voice here to let everybody take and look at the reasons why it is time for hemp. On the broadcast, also keep in mind that anytime you hear the word joint, you need to hit your bongs, your vaporizers, your pipes, whatever it is that you utilize to partake to take time for hemp. On the program, my joint host today, Al Byrne. Say hi, Al Byrne.
Hello, Casper. Good evening. I'm coming to you tonight from my cave. You can see in the background, but we're happy to be here. This is a very international show tonight, folks. Casper and I in the United States, Indiana, and Florida. And the other Al here we have come to know, Gal Graham, he'll show up pretty quick. He's in Canada. And then our guest tonight is from Australia. So we're pretty cool.
And that is true, Al Graham up there in Canada. You're letting everybody know how important it is to take time for hemp through the Pace Radio Network, right?
That's for sure, Casper. That's for sure. And just so you know, it's feeling like minus 20, 25 here in good old Canada. And we got so much snow over the last week. It feels like we're finally getting to the end of cleaning it up.
Well, that's groovy to hear. And I know that we have a guest on the other side of the planet. And I think their weather is a lot different than ours.
I would think so. We should find out. What do you think?
I think so. Why don't you bring him on?
All right. Well, at this time, we'd like to welcome Lauchlan Grout to the Time for Hemp broadcast. And Lauchlan is with Hemp Farms Australia.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, I guess, in the land down under over here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Al, and Casper.
Thank you for being here. I understand you're quite a pioneer there in your neck of the woods. You have been actively trying to help people understand the importance and value that's found in this remarkable plant and all the wonderful things that can be done with it.
Couldn't have said it better, Casper. So we've been at this for about 10 years now. Started it in 2013 with some of my best friends. And I think we all share the same vision as the gentleman on this call for a better future with sustainability around industrial hemp. And really, I guess we'll get more into the crux of how we started and the story behind the passion that keeps us going every day in this industry and this company. But definitely the sustainability aspects, the repetition of what activities we're undertaking and how they've already sort of been undertaken before the illegalization of industrial hemp, as it was tied and stereotyped to medicinal cannabis. So yeah, we're all fighting the same cause here, and I think we're all on the same page of what hemp can do. And it's been an incredible journey for us so far in finding out the I guess, unknown benefits of what industrial hemp can do. And yeah, I really look forward to showcasing some of those things with you today.
Well, unless I'm mistaken as well, you're also very involved from the beginning of like germination to picking the strains to making certain the types of plants that are being utilized for the products and different types of products that you put out. It gives a large spectrum of information and a wide variety of products that can like dazzle the world around us.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I want to know this. We've all been doing this stuff for decades. You have not, although a decade is a long time for your involvement. What got you here to begin with? I mean, you didn't just wake up one day and say, "Oh shit, let's get together with my buddies and do this stuff." What triggered you? What was the intellectual intrigue that brought you into this whole subject matter? Start us off.
Honestly, great question, Al. So it was a combination of things. I don't know if there was some sort of whiff in the air at the time that had myself and 3 other good friends of mine under the same sort of consciousness thought pattern. But we were all listening to the likes of Joe Rogan, back in 2012, 2013, when it was sort of initially just starting. We read a lot of books, written by the likes of Alan Watts and Terence McKenna, and we're sort of deeply diving through that sort of psychedelic psychonaut phase of our lives and trying to understand more of reality as it seems. And I think taking a large interest in sort of the history of certain industries that died out in the world or in the history of the world. And one thing that kept popping up was obviously Manitoba hemp harvests and their incredible hemp protein products that they were offering and still do offer. My best friend at the time, and still is my business partner in HFA today, he had to get his gallbladder removed. And with that, he wasn't able to continue consuming whey protein. So he needed to switch to a plant-based protein just for the digestibility of it, so he wouldn't lose all of his weight. We heard a lot about industrial hemp and how it was such a good plant protein, and how hemp protein as a plant protein compared to other plant proteins is one of the most digestible plant proteins in the world, almost double the amount of digestibility as pea protein. So it sort of just confused us why industrial hemp as a product, even as a nutritional product, wasn't known. So we conducted a lot of research and started to realize the differences between high THC or high CBD cannabis compared to low THC and low CBD industrial hemp. And once we figured out those differences, we realized that there was quite a big opportunity on the horizon, just due to the little competition or even headway that had been made in Australia in terms of hemp. Just to give you an idea, there were only 2 breeders that had dedicated a majority of their lives to breeding genetics that they'd brought here from Canada and China back in 1995. They had been localizing those genetics to tough, sort of restrictive Australian climates. And over that 10-year period, until we met those breeders in around 2010 to 2013, it became very apparent to us that there needed to be a lot of work done to get this commodity industry going. There was a lot of opportunity, especially for people of our age at that point in time. We were only about 20 at that point in time. And I think the excitement around building a new commodity industry from the ground up with little to no competition excited us. Also, the fact that industrial hemp, not only for its known benefits at that point in time, there's a lot of unexplored unknowns about industrial hemp and what it could do, not only for potentially soil rehabilitation, but also for the sustainable fibers and textiles that can come from it, the building products that can come from it. The fact that hemp steel, hemp plastic that is compressed in the right way is 6 times stronger than steel and can also outperform in terms of fire, retardation, compared to steel and other products. It just blew the concept out of the water for me, and the fact that no one was looking at it not only bugged me a little bit, but also just told me that this either hasn't been done because it's impossible, or it hasn't been done because it's been too hard. And I put it in the too hard category, which got me really, really going. So really, that is the real trigger that got us. The fact that no one else had bothered, and the fact that this plant with such incredible benefits was being disregarded so heavily.
That also blew away Jack Hare. I remember Jack knew about the Henry Ford hemp car, but he wasn't able to find proof of it. And I was interviewing a gentleman by the name of Gateway Galbraith at the San Francisco Earth Fair, and Jack was on hand, and he just got a fax from the Henry Ford Museum that verified that Henry Ford had used hemp in the auto body. And he found a film that he unearthed, and it shows Henry Ford hitting the back of the vehicle with a sledgehammer. And the narrator says, more lighter than steel and more durable than steel. And we've known since 1930s that what you just said to be true, that you can make steel out of this plant. And why it is that it's so unknown at this point is beyond my comprehension, especially in the world that we live in, where we're supposed to have mass information at our fingertips at any given point in time.
Yeah, I know. First time I read Jack Hare's book, like, I was blown away. I'm like, holy shit! It was one of those books that you put it down, you had to pick it right back up again.
Yep.
Yeah, to get
got a very, very good friend, Mike Lewis, who lives in Kentucky, and he grew one of the first legal industrial hemp crops after Prohibition. That was done in, I believe, 2016. There's a really lovely video on YouTube, which is a remake of it was backed and funded by Patagonia. So it's a Patagonia film, and it's about American industrial hemp. And it pretty much is in 3 to 4 minute video, shows that one of the first ever American flags that was ever created was created out of hemp fiber. The Bill of Rights is written on hemp paper. And I that's the one reason why I love doing what we do and targeting what we do towards America at the moment. And really the reason why we're all sitting here now is it is the time for hemp. And the sure, mate. It is the time for hemp, and as we've seen, pretty much the work that's already been done in the States and the story about that, there's already such a huge history there. And, the founding fathers were very, very comfortable with the fact that, industrial hemp was a pivotal point for American history in both world wars. So to disregard it, is either other powers at play that want that, or it's just the fact that it's so closely tied to medicinal cannabis at that point in time, back in the day, that it was just a slow uptake.
When did it show up in any form historically in Australia, or did it?
It did. It did. So back when cotton, really, it goes back to the days of cotton, as well as the days of really finding one story that I've heard is finding a suitable product for ceiling boards, and asbestos was compared to industrial hemp fiber panels. Now, we all know asbestos, 25 years later, after the product was completely produced and filled in all of our ceilings, including this ceiling, not anymore, but it would be 25 years ago. That's a poisonous product, and you now need licenses and expertise to get rid of that product before you go and replace it. And these are filled in all of our areas that we pretty much spend, 50, 60% of our days, either if it's at work or at home. And the fact that hemp got rug pulled from that deal or opportunity is just a simple case of, well, cost of goods. If this one's going to be cheaper and it can be supplied much more frequently, then that's great. So I know that that's one of the port of calls that also shunted hemp out of an opportunity like that back in the day in Australia. But with Australia as a whole, we really have copied everything that the US have done in terms of the industrial hemp industry. It's very much followed the same rig and mortar as the war on drugs, and the uptake in forming an industry here has been just as slow as the US as well.
Now, do you have your own farm to make your own products with, or are you working with a co-op?
So we own small lots of land to produce what we call as our greenhouse and our registered seed production. So that's all pretty much 1 to 5 acres in size. They're all under either outdoor or indoor controlled scenarios. And that means that we can ensure that each allotment of seed that we bulk up and then sell commercially in commercial quantities is very much replicant of itself. The phenotypes and characteristics of those phenotypes and are all very much identical across the whole scope of the crop. And it also allows us to remove any inconsistencies from that line that can show up after 3 or 4 generations. It also means that we can have a nice tight control over the THC parameters. So controlling the stress in the plant or in those crops at the early stages of its genetic life. And genetic life, I mean, within a hemp genome, you've got roughly about 6 or 7 generations before you need to come back to the mother seed. And that is a case of minimizing the risk of THC compounding up over those generations, which is a natural defense mechanism for industrial hemp. So industrial hemp produces THC as a terpene element as a part of its cannabinoid development as a defense mechanism, not only to obviously pests, but also sometimes diseases. So our breeder and our team have been able to identify precursor compounds to THC and THCVA, and those precursor compounds can actually be isolated, and we can control the upward trajectory of a compounded THC cannabinoid within a plant genome to stop that increase of THC over the generations. So that's really a large focus of what we've been doing in our small cropping scenarios. All of our larger cropping operations are done with growing partners of ours, as well as pretty much certified seed multiplicators. We do handpick those, and it has taken many years to handpick the right ones. But just like any other big seed company works around the world, like your Syngentas or your New Farms or your Bayers, they all have contract growers. They don't really own land themselves, and they do research with universities that have research teams in place to conduct that high quality work. So we try and reinvent the wheel.
It sounds to me like your country is like 20 years ahead of America.
What's the process for you to get like I'm assuming you have to get a license and all that. Like here in Canada, we have to deal with Health Canada, and there's all these regulations and things that the growers have to go through. What's the process for you in there in Australia?
Yeah, so in Australia, for industrial hemp, we have the Department of Primary Industries, which is a government ag department, state by state, that license and regulate the industrial hemp licenses for growing all hemp under 0.3% THC. There is also another body which pretty much only deals with the medicinal cannabis crops, which is for the prescription medicinal industry here. That is the Office of Drug Control. So there's two main arms. We deal with the Department of Primary Industries on a state level, state by state, depending on which state we grow on. And if we are wanting to export seed to a different country, such as America or South Africa, we have to run under a license and permit that is a part of the Office of Drug Control. So it's a much higher regulatory body, purely for the fact because they regulate the medicinal and pharmaceutical side of that industry. But the DPI here are very good. They are probably understaffed, but that's purely due to the probably scale of the industry and where it's at in Australia. We have formed industry bodies such as the Australian Hemp Council, Queensland Hemp Council, and that's how we communicate with those government departments to either improve licensing regulations or really just a voice for the industry to bounce off the regulatory bodies to better improve how everything can operate.
Let me go back to right at the beginning. Your hemp industry in Australia is regulated by agriculture people. Is that correct?
Correct.
How about that, guys?
Yeah, wow,
rocks.
amazing. Where it should be. It's where it should
Well,
be. There's no
yeah.
wrong with that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm glad that I wanted the audience to hear that, because there's a lot of us, mainly me, I guess, that rant a lot here in the U.S. that it's a plant and it should be held accountable as a plant. It's not a drug. Now, if you want to make a drug out of the plant, okay, you shift it over to another body. That makes sense to me, which regulates, I'm sure, for human purity, et cetera, which any patient or any healthcare physician would want. So you got a dual thing going there, but I like the idea. How about you? Is it working?
It's working, yeah. I
Good.
think there can be a lot of improvements, that's for sure. And I only mean really improvements around, and this is the really one thing that bugs me about some of these regulatory bodies, and it's not their fault. And I understand that and respect that fully. But what bugs me is farming's all about timing. And when you need to put a crop in the ground, you need to put a crop in the ground. And when it rains and you've got subsoil moisture, you need to use that. And if you don't, well, then you got to pay to irrigate, and that's an extra cost. And if, for example, we submit a sowing notification or planting notification to let the regulatory body that we're planting this variety at this location at this time, if they don't get back to us in 3 weeks, for whatever reason, we can't actually plant. And if we miss that planting window, they don't care. It doesn't matter. And when we're talking about using genetics that have been built upon a structure of GDD, which is growing degree of days, if we miss a sowing date and the daylight focus within that day is an hour longer, for example, or half an hour longer than what we'd shoot it for, we'll miss the perfect optimal flowering window for our variety. The whole crop will be probably 20 to 30 days later than expected. And then that pushes the timeline back now to then, for example, deliver seed to America, which takes 45 days on a ship. So like these contingencies they've come back to bite us in the butt at some points, because the timeliness of regulatory bodies getting back to us hasn't occurred efficiently. And like I sit on the Australian Hemp Council as a vice president, so I know what crops are going in where, and if it's really a busy time for regulatory bodies to receiving hundreds of papers to approve thousands of crops or no. There's only ever really 1 or 2 crops potentially nationally being grown every month. So it's not a huge task. So that's one of the things that does bug me. And I think that'll just improve over time. But yeah, those are some of the things that can really bite you in the butt if you're not prepared.
Another question you just popped in my head. I was in the Navy forever, and I've been on a lot of ships. So when you put these seeds on a ship, what is the physical condition of those seeds? I mean, how do you pack them? Is there humidity control, temperature control? What's going on there?
Yeah, temp controlled containers, and the way you pack it is very important. So we pack on pallets in 25 kg bags, so 50-pound bags pretty much. And we have a temperature control unit within that container, which registers over the course of its travel time the temperature going up or down. Now, the shipping lines guarantee us a range of temperature between 8 and 12 degrees C. Now, if it pops out of that range for too long, then we'll have a case to then, I guess, make an appeal to that shipping line, whether or not there was damage occurred on the sea due to the temperature rising to 20 degrees Celsius for 8 hours of the trip. Then we'll know that that could have an effect on the germination. It might not, but it could. And if it does, we can make an appeal for that. But that process there, really, whenever the seed's out of your hands and not in your control, it's always a risk. So when it's on a ship in a container, sitting at 8 degrees Celsius at about 40% relative humidity, we're safe. Any variances within 10 to 15% of that is fine. But anything drastically outside of that, then there can be some issues in terms of the quality of the seed. Yeah.
The United States, you probably have heard that in the past we had federal patients that were supplied cannabis by the federal government, even though it wasn't by federal law medicine, but they gave it to them as medicine. And, very contradictory policy. But the cannabis grown for these patients was grown at the University of Mississippi and was shipped to another state, North Carolina, by semi-truck to be made into cigarettes, if you will, joints for these patients. And our examination of the shipping method was that these trucks were not temperature control vehicles at all. The pot was packed in 55-gallon blue drums, which are, food quality drums, but nevertheless sealed up and put in a truck. And they get there when they get there, and they handle what they handle. And the result of the seeds and the material delivered to North Carolina was shit. That was what it was. And so I'm happy to hear that. And I was hoping I would hear what you guys have done is appropriate. My country, it's still got a lot to learn. We could learn a lot from you guys. When we were talking earlier, just before the show started, I told you that I was very interested in nutrition. You've touched on nutrition. Could you go a little deeper on that for us? I guess it's the seed nutrition, the oil of the seed. Is that what you were concentrating on?
Correct. Yeah. So it's hemp nutrition or hemp seed nutrition as a whole for humans and animals is quite extraordinary. So it's got a very high protein count. As I said, you can get up to around 60 grams of protein per 100 gram serving. Very, very high for a plant, and it's also very digestible. So you're actually receiving a lot of those plant proteins. It not only contains all of the 10 essential amino acids, but it's got a very, very rich and balanced omega-3/6 ratio. That ratio is about 3-to-1, which is not really seen in any other oils. Obviously, the oil helps with joint mobility pain, reduces arthritis symptoms. Great for animals in terms of coat repair, joint and mobility repair. Natural anti-inflammatory as well. We haven't seen the biggest uptake in nutrition or supplements in the hemp space for humans And I purely think that, or not purely think, but I 100% believe that it's due to the fact that you can't actually legally market or advertise industrial hemp products really anywhere in the world, because Google advertising runs under Google, and that's a federal company, or runs under federal US laws, and therefore hemp CBD products can't be marketed, and hemp protein and hemp seed oil fall under the same name and category as hemp for CBD. That's why Meta as well, and LinkedIn and people like those companies, they don't allow paid advertising for anything that mentions the word hemp. So all of these fantastic hemp brands out there pushing protein products and, you know, nutraceutical or supplemental products with hemp as an ingredient can't actually sell it to their target market because their ads won't be listed. That's a big resistance and challenge for these brands as well, and I think has a huge discrepancy on the uptake of this type of product. In terms of the animal feed side of things, we've had a lot of positive uptake for livestock with hemp, although it's not 100% approved, because the what do they call it? It's pretty much the residual limits of certain compounds within hemp, so potentially THC or CBD. They don't know what the levels of liability, so levels of detectability are within it yet, and they haven't set a safe, I guess, limit to how much can be present in the product before you give it to an animal that might be going through to human consumption. So at the moment in Australia, they don't really allow, it's similar to America, but they don't allow cattle or chickens or pork or pigs, for example, to eat anything that falls under the industrial hemp category, just due to those levels of detectability of CBD and THC potentially in the meat or fat. Which, look, the studies have occurred around the world. I know there's been studies in Europe that have been done. I know there's been studies in Texas on cattle in small amounts of animals that have been done, and the levels of THC and CBD within those animals is bar detectable, if not in the milligrams, with no effect on the end consumer, from my understanding. So, look, as a whole, hemp is an incredible, nutritious product. I think it's one of the best plant-based protein products for weight gain, as well as improving digestibility and gut health. I think it's got a lot of benefit in the livestock industry, but obviously only the byproducts of a food market can support a I guess flourishing commercial livestock market for hemp bioproducts, because you need one without the other. Otherwise, you've got no volume of product actually coming through.
Go on YouTube when you get a chance and look up a video. It's called Reefer Roasters. I actually have the rights to that film, and I'm going to try and do something with it. Maybe you'd be interested. But a friend of ours, now deceased, got a bunch of little chicks, got a professional farmer to grow these chicks on hemp seed. That's it. And he did so. During the course of the video, you'll see that the chickens were exposed to various other feeds in competition. And when given a choice, they always went to the hemp seed. I mean, every one of them. They'd fight each other for the hemp seeds, and there's a bucket of stuff sitting over there, and nobody gives us stuff. He actually brought this chicken. He had the chickens flash frozen, professionally done, clean, fixed, frozen, taken to the United States DEA first chili chicken cook-off, where he won. His hemp-based chickens won the best tasting chicken in the DEA cook-off competition. And it was most interesting thing in the whole movie to me. It's about 18 minutes. Is the federal inspector, or U.S. government inspector, and he's typical, man. He's got the he's got creased blue jeans and a nice shirt, and he's got a clipboard, and he's got a baseball cap, and he's 55 years old, and he's in good shape. And he picks up some of these chickens, and he asks my friend, who was a doctor, a PhD, he said, "Where'd you get these chickens?" And Skippy told him, I grew them. He said, "I've been doing this for 30 years. This is the best looking piece of chicken I've ever seen in my life." So look that up. I've been trying to get it to the chicken industry because they're missing the boat here. And then I see you speak Mandarin. So I don't know if you know this, but in China, when you go to the movie theater, they don't offer you popcorn. They offer you roasted hemp seeds. The Chinese have been eating this stuff for a billion years. It is, folks, I guess what I'm saying is it's really good food. Again, for reference, anybody listening, I produced a book in 1997 called Cannabis in Medical Practice. And we devoted one chapter of that book. It had 13 authors from 17 different countries, if that makes any sense. But we devoted a chapter to the quality of hemp as a food. I would call your all attention to that book, Cannabis in Medical Practice. The chapter on the breakdown of the food quality, proteins, is everything that Lauchlan has said, is right there for you to read, and it's just exceptional. It's wonderful food. It's wonderful food for humans and chickens. And if you got to figure, if it's good for that chicken, and then we eat the chicken, common sense says we're doing something smart. So I am very, very happy that you are pursuing this. I hope you're very successful with that food product because it can change the world. This is good food, can be grown on any continent, and as we're hearing, can be controlled down to a very tight degree. So I applaud that. I'm glad you're into it.
Now,
Much appreciate it.
When it comes to the hemp, even on the cannabis end of things, some people just think that cannabis is just cannabis. There's only just cannabis. It's not a variety of cannabis. I'm at your website and I see that you guys have seeds for sale. I'm assuming by the looks of it, maybe it was more along the line of, selling large quantities of it. And you've listed different varieties of the seeds that are available.
Correct. Yep. There's also a catalog at the top right. You can click on and there's a catalog there you can download
right there,
which has our full suite of different varietals in there.
So what are people growing for? Are they growing for food? Are they growing for fiber? Are they growing for fuel? Are they growing for a stony sensation? Are they growing 40 acres at a time? Or are they only growing 4 in the closet?
No, so majority of our customers and growers are all 40 hectares plus, so 80 acres and up. Our main, I guess, the end market that a lot of our customers are feeding into is the biomass and fiber market, mixed in with carbon sequestration. So a bit of a double dip there. So sequestering carbon throughout the crop cycle and then locking up that carbon in a certified product, either as a building material like a concrete block, a hemp block, or locking that up into a biochar product and then putting that back into the soil to add organic matter and also just to really improve soil performance and then also add carbon back into the soil as one of the most important compounds for that.
And where do you send the most seeds to? Like America, Europe, Brazil, South Africa? Who are your biggest clientele?
So our biggest market would be the US. And there is a reason to it. There is a bit of a strategy behind it. If you'd like me to sort of give a brief overview of that, I'm more than happy to.
Please do.
Yeah, because I wasn't aware that we had such a thriving hemp industry in our country at the moment.
I wasn't either. So yeah, let us know.
There would just be seeds.
Yeah, you do in a lot of the southern states. A lot of the northern states are focusing on grain production for the food market, and that's purely because they're using Canadian or European varieties that are well suited to those latitudes. Much colder climates, so they require a different genetic line to, I guess, excel in those areas of the world. It also helps to have someone like Manitoba over the border feeding those growers with good genetics and seed, and then offering them buyback agreements on all the grain that they produce. So it's a great circular economy structure that. And it's very similar to, a structure that we're putting together in those southern states, such as Texas and Kansas, Tennessee, even all the way over to Virginia as well. But really, what I guess strategy we're working off and trying to replicate is very much like the cotton industry back in the 50s and 60s. Australia's cotton, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, became a global leader in innovations in genetics and water efficiency and pest resistance. So these advancements directly benefited Texas cotton farmers, and really any cotton farmer in that similar latitude, due to the fact of the similar climates and similar latitudes as here. Australia's pretty much genetic researchers back in the 60s developed drought tolerant and heat resistant cotton varieties that thrived in those harsh conditions. Obviously, Texas, with its hot climate, unpredictable rainfall, found these genetics very suitable, and the adoption of Australian varieties led to higher yields, improved fiber quality, and better resistance to environmental stress. Also, the growing techniques that a lot of American cotton farmers replicated and were taught by Australian farmers really improved their efficiencies on yield performance, as well as being able to produce back-to-back cotton crops for a thriving cotton textile industry. So obviously, Texas isn't the most water abundant area, and there are water scarcity issues and water regulations in those areas. So trying to get the most return per acre from your crop on the least amount of water is obviously the goal, while still maintaining a high resistance to drought as well as pest and disease. So what we've been doing is developing varieties under that exact same strategy and model. So target a thriving industry and state, target companies that are similar to yours, whether they're family owned, family run, or family backed like ours is. We like to work with private groups just due to the timeline in decision making. So obviously with big public companies, things take time, and we're not at a point in this industry where we can take weeks or months to make a decision on something. And we know what works and doesn't work. We know where our varieties work and don't work, and we know the boundaries and limitations to its yield. So when we walk into a conversation or a potential deal with especially groups in America, I think the confidence and the level that we bring, as well as the understanding that we're not doing anything new here, we're replicating what was done 40 or 50 years ago in the cotton industry. And we're now working with cotton farmers in areas like Lubbock in Texas and Wichita Falls that have grown cotton from Australia, and now they're switching to grow hemp from Australia. So it's nothing new to them. In your head, it makes sense. We as Australians haven't really been the best at diving into new opportunities and throwing huge sums of money to get it going. We're quite risk averse, as our history has shown, and we like to perfect things before we push it out to the public and big note ourselves and get really the steam train rolling. So we've wanted to pretty much get our product as close to perfection as possible for these people, and then once they've grown it and they've seen it in their own world and they've seen it grow in their own land, that confidence is then shared, and then we can all grow together. So
now, do you have a guarantee? Do do you have a guarantee of a certain amount of germination? Like, example of if I get 10 seeds from Crop King Seeds, they boast that they guarantee that 80% of my seeds will definitely germinate if I follow proper procedures. So I noticed that you've said that your seeds are patented. So that means you've gone to the trouble to make certain that your seeds do certain things and have certain amounts of chemicals and, background and DNA. But when the farmer buys from you and they put their seeds out into the field, what kind of guarantees do they have with your seeds?
So yes, they are protected under plant breeder rights. So it's like having a patent over something, but in the seed commodity world, it's the exact same thing. It means that we can protect the varieties from being replicated and stolen to a degree, and that's obviously under our management and control. We guarantee germination rates of 85% and up. For any percentage below that, then there is a deduction in the actual cost price of the seed, depending on how much below that level of germination that we guarantee it is. We also guarantee certain vigor and also guarantee flowering initiatives and triggerings for that customer, expectations of that as well. And also guarantee crop length depending on, I guess, the speed at which the crop's growing, dependent on how much water it's received and nutrients within its first 45 days.
And for you to get that information, I know you can't grow all those seeds yourself to determine that. You rely upon what types of surveys and what type of research to give you that information so that you aren't holding the bag economically and you are still making a profit. I mean, jeepers, that's quite a guarantee you give.
Yeah, we unfortunately, but fortunately, the burden always does lay with us. So when we grow crops and we have customers that have already pre-purchased that seed from the crop that we're growing, we then take that seed and get it germ tested at a certified lab. We then store it in a certified, or what we call accredited storage facility, which has a relative humidity of around 40% or below, and always maintains temperature within the adequate sort of temperature parameters that we set. Now, when we harvest seed, it goes directly to that facility and stays there. So we pretty much lock in its germination at that point post-harvesting. Once the customer buys the seed, they look after the freight. If they want to have it in a non-cooled or chilled freight environment, that's their own risk. We don't advise that at all. But really, we take every measure in place possible to keep the quality of that seed as high as possible, up to the point in which it's in the ground or it's in the customer's hands. So we don't really like to ever rely on other people to give us germ reports or, I guess, data from a crop that's growing. We would rather collect that data ourselves on a crop that we're managing ourselves. If it's a customer's crop and they're requiring certain agronomy help or assistance, then we definitely hold their hand through that process. What we've learned is, instead of charging a grower or a customer of ours for every single piece of time or information that we've taken us 10 years to learn, like every other person we've found in the industry, they want to charge everyone for everything they've learned because they think it's special and unique. Whereas the aim of the game is to get the grower to understand and love growing this so much and actually make a profit out of it, that they want to continue doing it year after year after year. So we pretty much, we offer those services and that knowledge to people that we work with for free, considering that they will be a partner of ours. They will be a business, it will be a relationship of ours that'll be long term, and it won't just be a hop, skip, and a jump and a one night stand situation for them, which a lot of people have encountered, and they get a bad taste in their mouth and they don't really want to work with hemp again. You see it when seed companies send seed to growers and they make them pay you know, $3-4 a pound for it, and it ends up being 30% germ, and the grower says, well, I want a refund for the seed that's not going to grow, and the seed supplier says, oh, well, you know, we can't do that, sorry, you've already paid for it, and you know, the germination was this when we had it, but now it's that when you've got it, so it's your fault. And yeah, that leaves a very bad taste, and you can't be going around burning people in an industry that's not really an industry yet.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes.
Mm.
Exactly. Now, I keep hearing you talk about seeds, and I understand that, you know, hemp farmers do the seed end of things, but we know there's so much more to the hemp plant than just seeds. So what do you do with the rest of it?
Great question. Obviously, so we're a seed and genetics or biotech business, so
Right.
we try and maximize the amount of seed produced on crops and varieties that can be 100% grain focused varieties, as in production. They could be dual purpose or they can be fiber. And each line has a different result of yield for seed. Some are harder to get seed back off, some are easier. And what we, I guess, segregate as easy and hard is it's much easier to harvest a seed crop that's only 4.5 feet tall. It's much harder to harvest a seed crop that's 16 to 20 feet tall. There's a different method of madness involved. And we've had to learn the hard way, I'll tell you that. We've harvested, 50 hectares of crops and had, 50 ton of seed harvested. We're expected 50 ton of seed to be harvested, yet there's only 20 ton, and you're wondering where is the rest of it? And it's all on the ground because it's shattered off the plant before it's actually sat and been collected in the header bin. And then you realize that, 45 days later, because you've got an even better crop growing there than you had before. So it's a volunteer plants have come back almost better.
Yeah, so obviously closer to the ground, easier it is for your equipment to pick it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, a conventional header can sit quite low to the ground, whereas they can't get above 6 feet. The old ones can't. So you're sort of penciling into a crop that's much taller than the header, and it's being cut here with all this leg space and another 6 feet that way, and it's trying to cut it here with the rotary bins going round, so it's folding it, catching some, whereas some are folding outside of the actual bin and falling out. Some is coming in, some's going out. So we've had to learn different methods of madness to stop that. Because when you're selling seed at around $3.50 a pound, and you've got 100,000 pounds sitting on the soil, it's a big loss.
That's no good. Yes,
mate. But to answer your question, Al, seeds is one component. It's only a small component. The majority of the plant is fiber and hurd and leaf material. The fiber and the hurd. With our crops, we collect it as stubble. So once we've chopped, 50% of the plant off, we're left with about 50% of stubble, which is really just the base of the plant plus the root system in the soil. And some growers like to go through that with a sickle bar, which is a cutter bar that sits out to the side of a tractor. So tractor body here, sickle bar here, very sharp chopper bar like a chainsaw. And you just drive up next to the crop and it cuts it all off of the feet. And you come back and do it each way. And it pretty much cuts all the stubble. So it lays down the ground. You'll then let it retch in the field for about a week and a half. Let the natural dew do its thing on that retting stubble. And then it should turn to a dark, milky kind of gray color. Yeah. Gray, blacky, milky color. Yeah. Once that's done, you just go through with a normal hay baler, either round or square. They'll bale that up, let it dry on the field. And then there's about 2 companies in Australia that have pretty much pioneered the hemp construction industry. So there's a lady that her name's Clara Marilowski. She's great. She is pretty much a the main buyer for a lot of stubble crops of hemp in Australia. So she'll come around with a big B-double truck or a couple of them, pick up all the bales, and then they'll go to a housing project that requires hemp heard for it.
Nice.
Some
Cool.
farmers actually like leaving the organic matter in the ground and leaving that stubble there because it adds an extra element of shadowing on the
Yeah.
soil. So you wouldn't realize it, but that much of stubble, with the sun rising up and over, the actual shade of that stubble and millions of stubbles all through the crop, all in lines, that shade literally stops majority of subsoil moisture from leaving the ground just purely from that shade.
Oh,
So that's why people like leaving it in there. And then when they put another crop in, they'll cultivate and sow, as in plant, in between those stubble lines. Yep.
nice. Good. So it can be, put into many uses then in the end.
Absolutely.
And putting it back in the
Yeah.
ground is never a bad option. So
No. Some
No.
farmers prefer that because it'll give an extra kick and reduce some risks on their next crop.
help
Now-
rebuild the soil. So
Now, we had a guest on here recently who I asked him, how come that we're not taking the hemp industry to the next level where we're using it to create homes and to do 3D printing of homes and create fibers and foods. And here in America, where we're boosting this fantastic market and making it, world class. And he said that it is still too cost prohibitive to harvest it, and that it's still a very difficult plant to harvest. Is that the case where you are dealing with your hemp farmers?
I'd say it's more so the case of it's a difficult plant to process. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can process the plant. The most known way is decortication. And decortication plants typically from Europe, because they pretty much were the founding fathers of decorticating hemp. They're very expensive, very costly. There's some groups in Texas that have spent upwards of 100 million US on European branded decortication processing plants.
Wow.
That'll spit out, up to 10 tons of material an hour. But really, a decortication plant is very similar to a cotton gin plant. They both achieve the similar result, but for different plants. There is an argument to say that a cotton gin can be refurbished for little cost to be able to take hemp bales on it that have been decorticated. So there is no need to reinvent the wheel for ginning hemp. You can put it through a cotton gin and achieve the same thing. And I believe that is happening in some areas of Texas in a very large way. And a lot of that material is heading over to places like India and Bangladesh for textiles.
Wow.
nice.
Yep.
Wow.
So you talk of the different hemp strains, if that's the correct word, for different purposes. How many strains does your company work with?
So we have about 9 varietals of industrial hemp. Our breeder, John Hall, he was one of the 2 founding fathers of industrial hemp in Australia. And so in Australia, there are registered varieties. To actually play in the industry here in Australia under a license, you need to use one of those registered varieties. HFA own about 60% of all of the registered varieties in Australia. Those primarily are quite balanced out in terms of what they achieve. So we have 2 grain varieties. One is Bundy Gem, the other one is Tagigi. Bundy Gem is our seed that's in commercial production at the moment. Tagigi is not. We also have King G2 and Wungara, which are our fiber varieties. We've tested those varieties for carbon sequestration as well as overall yield, and we've had results from universities back with upwards of 24 tons of carbon sequestered per hectare, which is roughly about 12.5 to 13 tons per acre. In terms of fiber production, some of these varieties of ours here for the fiber are pushing upwards of 18,000 kilos of biomass per hectare, which is, it's phenomenal. And then we also have dual purpose varieties. Now, I always have been against dual purpose varieties because I guess I've just been taught by the oldies in my life that you can't be good at two things. You're either good at one or you're good at the other, or you're shit at both. And my argument for this is, well, with these dual purpose varieties, it's not the fact that you're either good at one or the other. It's very dependent on when you plant it. So if you plant it very early in the season, it will perform very well as a fiber crop because it's got much more time in its vegetation phase. Whereas if you plant it very late in the season, it won't have much time at all in its vegetation phase. Therefore, it'll trigger into flowering quite quickly and the crop height will stay very short because it hasn't had enough days in its veg stage to get tall, because we've planted it so close to its flowering trigger. Whereas you want more fiber, plant earlier.
Being you are down under, when is your optimum growth season? Is it?
It's
Like, I'm just wondering whether it's any different than what it is up at this end of the world. That's all.
It's pretty much the opposite. You just got to flip it.
So you'd be talking like from
so your growing window is very much for fiber crops planting in March.
Well, even outdoors, you probably April, May, because we can still get snow in May.
And down here we're planting in roughly September. So 3 months in from the end of the year, and you're 3 months in from the start of the year.
Right.
Down here in the United States, since cannabis was banned in this country, there's been an exception on bird feed. You go to any grocery store in the United States and buy bird feed, and it'll have hemp seeds in it. Do you sell into that product as well?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because when we first started HFA back in 2013, we, Australia and New Zealand, were the only countries in the world where consuming industrial hemp food was still illegal. So we couldn't consume hemp seed oil, even as a topical for skin products. It was believed to be, because your skin is technically an absorbent, you're technically absorbing an illegal substance. So at that point in time, and that didn't change until 2017. So we were hamstrung up until that point. Like, we were selling seed to aviculture places, avariums, high value bird. We had one of Australia's most high quality Casper farms, and different imported peacocks or something, very high value birds that were eating hemp seed, because we were selling them for $3 a kilo. About $2 US a kilo pretty much back then, and that's a very high cost for a bird. So that was really how we actually got things going, and how we survived in the initial 4 to 5 years was selling majority of our crops for the most we could to bird, high quality premium bird producers.
Well, I am glad I asked that question. I suppose you're familiar with the Birdman of Alcatraz?
No, wait, please tell me that.
I'm a storyteller. That's why I'm here. There was a very, very bad man, a murderer, and he was confined for his life to Alcatraz, a very infamous maximum security prison in California.
I love Alcatraz.
And he became a world-class bird expert. I mean, world-class. He wrote books and did all kinds of things. One day he went to the warden of the prison, Alcatraz, and he asked him if he could provide do an experiment in the prison. And basically what he asked and what he got permission to do was take control of the basketball court in the prison. It was an indoor, high ceiling, very large court. And he controlled the whole thing. It was all closed up. He put 40 different piles of seeds on the basketball court. Pick a seed, flax seed, etc. Hemp seed was, of course, one of the piles. Then he had a couple of dozen birds, one of each type of different variety of birds. Songbirds, everything you can think of, different varieties. I don't know enough about birds, but he had a whole bunch of them. And he let them go one at a time. They were hungry. He made sure they were hungry. He let them go one at a time. And every single bird had its choice of where it wanted to go and eat. And every single bird went automatically to the hemp seed. Again, nature telling us this is pretty damn good food. Yeah. So again, I emphasize it again to the audience, and I hope I'm talking to you too a little bit. Don't give up on this. Animals in our world are very essential to our life. We don't like to kill them, but we got to. It's the way this friggin' place works. You got to die to something else to live. But while they're getting taken care of by us humans, they ought to be taken care of really well, in my opinion. And this hemp seed, if birds know it's what they need, we should take a lesson. Well, I'm glad you got into that for a while. Those seeds, I guess, when you were selling in that way, were they irrigated or something to keep them from germinating?
I don't know if I can answer this on this call.
I'm sorry to ask these tough questions, but that's what we do here.
Yeah. I'll answer it this way. The seeds were denatured to the best of our ability.
Okay.
They weren't irradiated. They weren't cooked in any way. We made it clear that the seeds were no good for planting. Therefore, they're good for consumption.
Now, that is another question I have is you sell seeds for farmers to grow, and you also sell seeds for people to make product out of. Do you also sell product to eat? Do you sell seed to people who make paint and lacquer and varnishes and that type of item as well? Or is all your seeds either for planting or for food?
Majority of our seeds are purely for planting reasons.
All right.
So
and how do you stay in business? I mean, how do you find all these many seeds? I mean, you're talking about 1 billion seeds a year, aren't you?
It all comes into the breeding program. It all comes into, obviously, farming's one thing, running a business is another thing, and managing cash flow for a farming business in the hemp industry is a completely other thing. So it's and obviously, it's less occurring at the moment, but definitely over the years, we've had to learn how to strategically manage cash flow as well as manage expectations from customers, because the way the industry is at the moment is growers or suppliers or processors, they want things in 3 months, or they want something next month, and they've got an opportunity on the horizon, but they want to do it now. And you can't just grow a hemp crop at any time of the year, and you can't expect a seed supplier to have 50 ton of seed available at the drop of a hat, because if anyone's sitting on 50 ton of seed, they're sitting on 50 pallets at roughly $6 per pallet sitting in a cold storage unit. So they're burning cash whilst waiting for you to make a decision on whether you want it or not. So we're not really at the point in time yet where we're like Monsanto sitting on 550 tons of corn seed, because we know that 600 ton demand is coming in the next 2 months because the season's coming up for corn. It's not like that at this point. And for it to get to that point, we need to build supply chains and we need to build end markets that have volume, because then breeders like ourselves can go out there and actually focus on producing a bloody good product and seed, and not try and focus and stressing on managing cash flow for, product that one customer said they wanted, but now 2 months out from the crop of planting, they now don't want it anymore because their funding's disappeared, or their brother's gone off and slept with their sister or something, and now they're all fighting. And it's just, and I've worked in other commodity industries throughout my life, beef as well as cotton and corn, and it doesn't happen in those areas because there's 60 years of history. And that's just what we're going through at the moment. And I think that's what you need to go through to build up an industry like this, and also try and remove all of the potentially negative stereotype that some individuals can, attach to someone trying to push an industry like this. So it's not only the language you use and the way that you represent yourself, but also, I guess, the stature in which you walk around with, and what you're trying to represent and prove needs to carry true and forth with everything you do and every engagement that you come into. We've been fighting politicians for the past 10 years on trying to educate them about the differences with, smokable or consumable cannabis for medicinal benefit compared to an industrial hemp, which you can try and smoke in a telephone-sized bowl of it. You probably die of emphysema before you get high. So, trying to get that through to them is just, I just want everyone to be on the same page, because as I sit here with gentlemen like yourself, you get it and you understand it and you lived and breathed it, whereas these other individuals haven't, and we have to walk them through that process to make business and life simpler.
I suppose your politicians are very much like ours. I'm guessing that their background is lawyers, attorneys, law enforcement. Is that true?
Yeah, they're just not as wealthy as your politicians.
Yeah. So, again, all of us have been doing this, and like you, and one of the things that we've all found with our politicians, I guess it's the same. I'm hearing what you're telling me. They don't know anything about growing anything. They're not, most of them aren't farmers. Most of them here in the United States, I mean, I say this kind of with a tongue in cheek, but I don't think I'm very wrong, is they don't get that cannabis is a plant. They just don't. When they hear the word, their mind triggers something, and they don't see a beautiful plant growing in the field. They see a drug, and possible problems with that drug. Is that the way Australia government law kind of looks at this? Is it still a criminal thing down there? Or how's that go?
It really, exactly like you said, gets put into the basket of too hard, too fast to deal with right now. There's too hard to deal with right now, and there's no one sitting across my table right now that's willing to push a bucket of cash under the table and say, just do this right now and get over it, please. There's no one doing that. And look, I'm sure, and to your point, Al, they look at it like the exact same opinion and perspective that you just spelt out then. It's a drug, it's bad, it's, negative connotations, the history of it, potentially cartels, mafia, blah, blah, blah. The way that we should be looking at it is there's cash, there is tax money to be made, there is improvements to life, to country, to infrastructure, to everything that can be made off this. Not just taxing medicinal cannabis, but taxing industrial hemp in a small manner. Just like they tax, well, not tax, but there's levies in place for certain cotton institutions, and there's corn grower associations where they all get levied, and however much they produce, a tiny percentage of it goes back to the association for the state or the country, and then that association then invests in research and different fertilizers and chemicals that can better improve the growing of that crop throughout the whole country. That's a full circular economy of fed, state, industry association and actual individual in the industry working together. At the
Yeah,
moment,
and not
like
to
you said,
mention
Al,
all
they
the
just don't want to answer it.
not to mention all the local jobs that come from that, because so many people in so many different countries complain that all the jobs are overseas. No matter where you're living, they're saying all the jobs are overseas. Whereas if you're growing this plant down the road, you can have a factory that's turning it into fiber, or a place that in the back, down the road, basically in your backyard, that's turning it into fuel or into food, and you can create all those jobs and 2 grow seasons in your own community.
Absolutely.
How many people do you employ?
So there's 3 people in our team. Pretty much got a head agronomist. We've got a communications and PR lady as well, and then there's Harris and myself. We're bringing on, hopefully in about 2 months, a new breeder as well. That'll be working on all of our varieties sort of from that point forward, which I'm really excited about. And then potentially towards the middle of the year, just to free up some of my time, we're going to bring on an operations manager just to run all of our core farming operations.
So you're doing this with a relatively small core of people.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that most of your seeds goes for growing. Is there a different kind of hemp seed that produces a better milk than a different strain?
When you're diving into those finer details of a variety, you're really looking at what the processors, or probably the brands, would look at in that perspective is, what's the percentage of oil in a whole seed? We've seen and obviously the larger the seed in that perspective is better, because you're going to have a lot more hull in it, which is the white core heart, as well as a higher percentage of oil. Therefore, your extraction, so per ton of seed that you cold press, if you've got a higher percentage of oil in your seed, your extraction is going to extract more seed per ton of oil compared to other varieties. So like with Bundy Gem, for example, and Ruby, there's a 33 to 34% oil percentage in it. Therefore, we can guarantee processors that they'll get roughly, for every 10 ton of seed that they cold press, they'll see roughly 3.3 or 3.4 thousand litres of oil. So there are, I guess, characteristics for each variety that benefit an end market, like you've just said.
Yeah.
Now, when you do your crossbreeding and when you create your strains, do you do the types of work that's been done for, like, let's say, the indoor grow industry, where they've managed to take a crossbreed between a geranium and a cannabis plant and turn it into an autoflower? So within like three days of it coming out of the ground, it begins to flower. Do you do those types of genetics?
We're working on that, yes. So our grain varieties are pretty much, they're not auto-flowering as you would state it specifically, but they do have auto-flowering, I guess, abilities. What we say is, we know that this variety will flower within 30 to 40 days of sowing, pretty much no matter when you plant it throughout the year. That's what we consider as our autoflower, and that's because it's been developed more so not off growing degree of days, but environmental factors as well as gene type factors that will trigger that flowering immediately.
Okay.
You got an insect or a problem or a parasite or anything down there that goes after hemp?
Yeah, there are a lot. Probably the biggest one that we deal with is Heliothis, and that's very prevalent in cotton crops. Really, in the most recent years, we haven't really had any issues with disease or pests. The only other soil-borne disease that we've encountered, which was quite bad, was sclerotinia. Sclerotinia is when there's a lot of white fungus that builds around the base of the plant near the soil. And if you pull the actual root system out, you'll have a lot of white, moldy looking fungus along the roots. So sclerotinia is really only prevalent in areas of high humidity and high moisture. And that's a lot of our sugarcane and bean production areas in far north Australia. Because they grow beans there every day in and out. They're pretty much planting and harvesting every day. So it's non-stop throughout the whole year. And we have grown crops in bean country before. And a lot of those varieties that they're using for beans are resistant and have been built to resist sclerotinia. We encountered it. We took plant samples from that diseased field and then pretty much identified or grew further plants that didn't have those disease pretty much existing. And then we created a new line from that line as a disease resistant crop of sclerotinia. So then we could actually continue following years growing in a high bean production area without the risk of sclerotinia. So identifying diseases is one thing, but then producing variants of the same line of varietal to then withstand that disease is another process in itself.
Does that transfer to Texas? Is that a problem in Texas where the same affliction?
No, I haven't seen it there. No, Texas is quite dry, which is good. Yeah. We've got a lot of humidity. Like in areas up north, the humidities can sit for months at around 90%, sometimes 92%. It's wild. Yeah, you literally get out of the car or your house and you're immediately sweating.
Yeah, it's interesting. A long time ago in a place far away, I swapped my Jeep for an Australian officer's Land Rover, I guess it was. And
was it a Land Cruiser?
Yeah, that's what it was. He had mine for 2 weeks and I had his. We had a blast. We tried to destroy him. Anyway, I was pretty impressed with this officer because we were in Vietnam, and it was really humid and it was really wet and it really sucked. And he didn't have a problem with it. And he told me that he was from a part of Australia that was normal. So I guess that was North Australia. He fit right in. Now I understand. He liked what was that beer he liked down there? It had a tiger on the can. You guys still got that beer? I think it was Tiger beer, wasn't it?
Tiger beer.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He was drinking a lot of that. I remember that. It was good stuff.
That is good. That's from Singapore.
Is that what it is? Okay. I thought it was. I thought it was your stuff. Okay.
It's drunk a lot here though. They love
it's Foster's is yours though, right? Isn't that Australian?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Well,
so where do you see that? Go ahead, Al.
I was just going to tell another story. Go on, Casper.
So where do you see the hemp seed industry going on a global basis? Do you see it going more towards farming? Do you see it going more towards food?
I truly believe that one of the most important directions that hemp is going in is the role that it's playing in the carbon economy. I believe that the role that it's going to play in soil rehabilitation processing, so removing PFAS and removing heavy metals such as boron and nickel and zinc and all of the large, or I guess bad heavy metals that are in our soils. It is a great remediator of those things. I think that will benefit our infrastructure construction projects such as building airfields, building or rehabilitating mining sites that need to be rehabilitated back to their original condition once they've been destroyed or used or dug up. All of these programs in which bringing environments back to their original, I guess, state is there's a role for hemp to play in that, and there's a role for hemp to play in the rehabilitation of those soils. There's an also, you know, as the icing on the cake, you can rehabilitate soils from heavy metals and PFAS whilst at the same time sequestering carbon from that soil. So you got a double revenue stream from, you know, killing two birds with one stone there. I think expanding the international collaborations between, you know, investment boards as well as processing platforms and big grower groups will open up the industry to a large commercial and viable volume that the cost of producing products won't be ridiculous. It won't be cost ineffective. And I think the more that we see larger players of commodities dive into this industry and actually start to see, you know, the, I guess, comparable differences between what they're doing now with a subpar product and what they could be doing with a hemp included product, will shock many in a good way. So really,
Okay.
yeah, they're the three areas that I see it pushing.
Who's in charge with the seeds? Which country? Who's got the show here? Are you in the top three? What's going on?
Look, it's hard to say at this time because I'd cut up the areas of viability of seed into two: Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. Northern Hemisphere is very much dominated by the European breeders because they've been doing it much longer. A lot of those European breeders have obviously exercised their activities in Canada and made a name for themselves, and now big brands in Canada like Manitoba have taken on those varieties and localized them and created their own. That's happened over the past sort of 25 years.
Yeah.
So they've got their stuff down pat. When you start to bring industrial hemp closer to the equator, you're now talking with tropical and subtropical varieties, which is a very different game to be playing in with hemp. Hemp's originally from Siberia. So trying to bring it into a very drought-stricken environment, little water and high heat, is the complete opposite to what it's genetically originally used to. So it's a lot of time, a lot of patience and money that goes into adapting these varieties to a climate and condition. I would say Australia and China have the biggest advance in terms of viable varieties for tropical climates, whereas Europe is much more advanced in terms of far distances from the equator, so, you know, far north and also far south. So like in Tasmania, for example, you know, that random little island off the southern end of Australia, a lot of the European varieties work well there. But as soon as you bring them to mainland Australia, ugh.
Oh, really? Wow. I had once a big involvement with a wheat farm 200 miles south of the Canadian border, North Dakota, right in the middle of the place. And when we got done harvesting, on average, we pulled out a net profit of about $50 an acre, which is not much, but if you got a lot of acres, it adds up. But right north of us, 200 miles, the Canadians were growing hemp. We were growing wheat. They were growing hemp, and they were netting out at $200 an acre, 4 times what we were doing. Is that profit margin still valid?
It's hard to say because it's very different for each end market. The profit margins will differ, obviously, depending on how well you grow the crop and how well you yield it, and then how many inputs you had to get there. And, you know, if you're paying for water, that's a cost. If you've got natural in-crop rainfall without irrigation and you get a lot, then that's great. You've got a lot of water without paying for it now. There's a lot of variables in that. So, but I guess the best way I could answer your question is, if you know how to grow the crop and you know what you want to achieve from that crop, whether it's a focus on grain or it's a focus on fiber, if grown well, you will profit quite considerably out of it if done well. Yes. Going off your first crop, though, you can never expect anything to be perfect or go right.
Yeah, we were just flabbergasted. Like I say, we're 200 miles apart from the Canadian farmer. So we had the same weather, you know, it was Red River Valley, it's great food, great land, et cetera, and just the, you know, how much they were making, and they were working less. You know, that's one thing I noticed about the hemp crop. Doesn't take a lot of personal care. That plant takes care of itself pretty well, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It is essentially a weed.
Yeah,
It will suppress other weeds as well. As soon as it gets a good canopy cover and it's covering its interrows between the plants, then you won't have any competition with weeds. And once it gets up and going, there won't be anything that grows beneath it. That canopy cover will cut out all sunlight. So any other potential weeds that'll grow on the actual bed of the crop, the risk is very, very low, and the likeliness of it is low as well. But really, those first 30 to 40 days of your crop are the most critical. Once you've got that down pat, if you've got access to irrigation or fertigation, which is just pretty much fertilizing liquid nutrients through your irrigation system, you can really bump up the crop and add extra support if it's going through its seed production stage. So just after vegetation, you'll enter seed production or flowering, where post-flowering, you'll have seed set. During that seed set stage, you want as much either moisture or nutrients available for that plant to pull from so that it can exercise that process, you know, efficiently.
When she's getting ready to flower, to start the seed, how do you, I guess this is a smart question. How do you keep outside influences, outside pollen that you're not in control of? How do you keep that out of your product?
Yeah, pollen drift is a risk as well, definitely. We like to keep any other hemp crop at least 8 to 10 kilometers away. If we've got a lot of what we call pollen barriers, so tree lines that separate our field and surrounding fields. We also look at natural wind flow and direction. So in the valley that we grow in, there is a natural wind direction every day that flows. And we know that, say, upstream, for example, in that wind direction, there are no hemp crops within the area. It's same rules almost apply when you're doing large chemical inputs into crops and you're running, you know, spray rigs over thousands of hectares of crops. You have to make sure that the wind is under a certain level, as in knots, not pointing in the direction that's going to spray. You know, you're not going to have potentially Roundup drift onto a neighboring's property and then their whole crop dies. So very similar rules that we apply for pollen drift.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we recently did a report in our news broadcast about a situation where a farmer had a separate crop from cannabis, 2 different farms, and they got the drift, and it ended up being pesticides that drifted, and it ruined the organic crop of the cannabis for the licensed producer. And they were able to trace it back to this farmer, so he's being sued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering about. I mean, I guess anything can happen. Wind can change direction or whatever. But so there's a slight risk. Is that what you're saying about pollen drift?
There is a slight risk, but if you know or if you're aware of surrounding hemp crops, which we always are, you can set it up so there is no risk.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because that's been discussed here in the United States a lot, whether or not that cross-pollination would hurt anybody's crop, you know. But if it can be controlled, that's good.
Well, certainly if you've got a medicinal crop nearby, a pollinating industrial hemp crop, it will completely ruin your medicinal crop as it will spread pollen into those females that are trying to produce bud or flower. And then that pollen will tell them, no, don't do that, produce seed. And now that cannabis grower's expecting bud from his females, and now they all start shooting seed. He was expecting pounds and pounds of flower to sell, and now he's got pounds and pounds of seed to sell. So there's been a lot of issues I've heard, and pitchforks brought up with those issues occurring across many states in America. Yeah. So I think once that was known, there was a lot more due diligence undertaken before putting a crop in.
Okay.
Good.
Well, we've taken a good bit of your Australian day, and I know you got to go to work. We don't. We're all old geezers. We don't work. Yeah. So, I want to say thanks again. This was very intriguing conversation. I appreciate the everything. And so, before you leave us, what do you want to put out? We've got your notice on the bottom, guys. You see the banner going by to find Hemp Farms Australia, and of course we want you to check it out. That's what these shows are all about. Learn what's going on. But is there anything that you want to bring up that we didn't ask about, or you want to emphasize in any way?
I think maybe just closing remarks. Look, we've got the NOCO Hemp Expo coming up in Estes Park in Colorado, April 10th to April 12th. I'll be speaking at that as well, just on pretty much what Hemp Farms Australia is about, our story, and why we're targeting certain areas of America with our seed. And then also just sharing some key performance metrics on our varieties, and also trials that we've conducted in different states, those southern states over there in the US. So that'll be a great way, if anyone of your listeners are in the area or want to pop in, I'll be there physically in person. I'd love to connect. I think what you gentlemen here are discussing on this podcast and have discussed in the past is very enlightening. I've really enjoyed my time speaking with you. Can't wait to speak with you guys again. I think we've covered really a lot of areas of the industry as well as the plant itself. I hope that at least yourselves and your listeners might have not a different perspective of hemp, but a broader and more respectable understanding of the plant itself, and what, I guess, industry players in the industry globally are trying to do, like ourselves and also yourself. So thank you very much for having me here. Hemp isn't just a crop, it's a solution. And I think the more that we innovate, collaborate, and really push this industry forward, I think the greater impact we can have on the planet and also the future generations. So thanks again for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure in joining in this conversation.
Well, I know I've learned an awful lot, and I have really enjoyed having you on as a guest. I hope to have you back again soon. Al Graham, why don't you let people know about your book? Oh, I'm sorry. Al Byrne, why don't you let people know about your book?
Yeah, Graham isn't the author. I wrote the book. Yeah, it's right down there for country and cannabis. And here's another one. I don't know. Can you see that? That's the book I mentioned that we put together in 1997, Cannabis in Medical Practice. And the guy that wrote the chapter on hemp, you might know him, Lauchlan, is Robert Connell Clark, who is a world-class hemp expert. He's worked all over the world and developing that. And so it's a chapter on not only the how to grow hemp, but how hemp will be good for the world, just as you mentioned, that we've got a potential solution here to a lot of problems, from climate change to people not having enough to eat. It covers it all. My book, For Country and Cannabis, is a history book. It basically centers only on medical cannabis. I do mention hemp a lot, and legalization comes in, but it's a book about medical cannabis, how it came to be in the United States and the world. In the world now, we have some 30 countries that have therapeutic cannabis in their pharmacopoeia, whereas a few years back that didn't exist at all. And the way that all came about, I wrote about in For Country and Cannabis. The country part is I spent 24 years in the United States Navy, so I told stories about how cannabis interfaced with the active duty troops of the Navy, basically, although I was around Army and Marine Corps guys, and they enter into the story as well. But it's a good read. It's got a lot of educational material in it. It's about 360 pages, and I jammed it full of information about cannabis and health and how that can help a variety of diseases and help us to a very nutritious lifestyle. So if you're interested in the subject matter, either hemp or medical cannabis, of course I wrote it, so I think it's a cool book. But I would definitely pick it up if you have a real interest in this, or if you're a patient and you're sick and what's going on isn't working. You might want to listen to the words spoken by any number of doctors and researchers in that book. Not my words, they're other people's. I just copied them down. And then Al Graham he's our Canadian influence here, and has done this radio work on this subject for a long, long time. And I'll let him tell you. Pace Radio Network.
All right. First off, I want to thank Lauchlan for coming on to the broadcast today or tonight or tomorrow or however this works. I feel like you're in the future to us. But yes, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot, as well as Pace Radio. You can catch it at paceradio.net. We broadcast every day of the week. Something new is going out, and we talk about psychedelics as well as cannabis.
And I want to thank you, the audience, for tuning in. For without you, we have no reason to be doing what we're doing. And we ask that you share us with your friends. A friend of mine by the name of Jack Hare once said, hemp might not save the planet, but it's the only plant that possibly can. And it's true. I mean, we can create food out of this, clothing out of this, paper out of this, fuel out of this. Anything made out of plastic can be made out of hemp. Build buildings out of this. Almost 90% of our creature comforts can be made from this one single plant. And in a world that desperately needs solutions to so many problems, they need to know that this is a solution to a lot of those problems, and it really is time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, time for hemp! Yeah!
Time for Hemp is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at Pace Radio.